Not only do I learn more about our collective past every time, but I also learn more about myself. And Dante's tireless effort has sparked much needed conversations and ignited conversations across the country. As he stands here before you today as an advocate for justice, seeker of truth, and catalyst for transformation, I encourage you to listen with open hearts as he shares his insights, challenges our assumptions, and inspires us to build a world where mental health knows no barriers. If you feel challenged by what you hear today, I encourage you to lean in and explore that challenge and allow it to help you get a better understanding for the need of the systematic change we need in this country. Thank you for being here today on part of this occasion. Together, we can rewrite the narrative to be one of compassion, resilience, and healing. Welcome to UCSF Nancy Pritzker Building, and let our journey together begin. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and welcome everyone. My name is Christina Houston. I'm an APEX Principal Educator, a graduate of the Diversity Inclusion Certificate Program, and I serve as our Speaker Series Co-Chair for our Health IT Anti-Racism Committee, known as ARC. I am honored to be here today as we celebrate Black History Month. First, I'd like to start off with a land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge the Ramaytush Ohlone people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Ramaytush Ohlone elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, the land that UCSF sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Ramaytush Ohlone community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Thank you. Now, I would like to introduce Erin S. Gore. She, her pronouns, is the Senior Vice Chancellor of Finance and Administration, leading over 250 employees across 9 departments, providing key central organizational
folks we have on the phone. That's a little old school, on the Zoom. We are so fortunate to have Dante King as part of the broad UCSF community, and I will also say family. He is all of the wonderful things that were teed up. He is highly intelligent. He is a wonderful storyteller. He's able to make a complex, emotionally fraught, traumatic experience in history something that we can all relate to in different areas. And I will also say he's provocative. And why we need that is because it's hard to do this work, and it's hard to think differently about long-held beliefs that most of us don't even realize are in the recesses of our brain. We are so lucky to have him at this moment in time, and I will welcome him here so we can start his discussion. Please give a warm UCSF welcome to Mr. Dante King.
Hello. So before I get started, I would definitely want to first recognize Eileen for your partnership, support, just untethered, as well as Ms. Melissa Bautista. Had it not been for her, Dr. Alicia Hill, I would not have been as present in the footprint across UCSF as I have been over the last 4 years. I want to thank you, Erin, for your leadership and authenticity. Dr. Alejandra Rincon, as well as Dr. Renee Navarro, and Alexis Cobbins, who's no longer here with UCSF. So I'm gonna try to do this different, a little different. Okay, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I am going to jump in here. This is a 16-week fellowship that I'm currently leading with Dr. Robert D'Angelo. We just started yesterday, actually. And then there is an 8-week course that is featured on my website if anyone is interested in diving deeper into some of the things I'm going to present and share here with you today. So, quick quote by James Baldwin, who's one of my role models and great influences. The power of the white world is threatened whenever a black man or black woman refuses to accept the white world's definitions. So I'm actually going to be using some terms and definitions that have evolved here in our white culture, but I'm going to use them in ways that are necessarily untypical. So I'm going to give a trigger warning, and I'll be sharing a series of videos with you. So I'm giving a trigger warning for my entire presentation. Turn to the person next to you and say, this is for the entire presentation. If anyone believes it says, he didn't give a trigger warning. Yes, he did. The other thing though too, and my work is for black people so that we can have a better understanding of our experience here in white America, as well as a better understanding of how this culture and its institutions evolved and how they impact everyone, not just black people, but white people, Asian people, and all other racial groups that are racialized here in this culture, in this country. And so I say that to say that if you are not someone who prioritizes the humanity and the upliftment and the care and concern of black people, this may not resonate for you. So turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, if you're someone that doesn't care about black people, then this may not be the event for you. All right.
Yeah.
How does this land on you? How would you define what's happening here with a series of videos?
Never in a million years would I think that something like this would happen with him coming out of school.
Dolores Coleman says a San Francisco police sergeant detained her 7th grade son as he left the Stern School March 15th for a crime he didn't commit.
Our black and brown children do not deserve this, and it really needs to stop.
Attorney John Burris says the 13-year-old was racially profiled by Police Sergeant Para as he was getting into his tutor's car after school.
There was no legitimate basis to stop this young man with only that he was black and African American. That in and of itself is not enough.
According to Burris,
All right, 30 seconds with the person next to you. How would you define this experience? All right, we're going to play another video. Are you ready? Here we go.
What is shameful in this country, this story right here. 4 black 12-year-old girls in Binghamton, New York were giddy and excited during lunch. 12-year-old y'all. Okay? The school, though, didn't like that. Because these 4 black 12-year-olds were giddy, the school called the girls into the office and attempted to strip search all 4 of them because they assumed they were on drugs. According to the children, this is exactly what happened. Student A was made to remove her shirt pants and second layer of leggings. Then she was searched in her bra and underwear. Student B was made to remove her shirt and her outer pants. Searched in leggings and bra. Student C was made to remove her shirt and searched in her bra and pants. Student D was searched in her clothing. Received in-school suspension for refusing to remove her shirt and pants.
All right, 30 seconds. How would you define this with your neighbor? What words would you use?
stuff would be so clean to support safe words.
All right. Here we go. Here's another one.
There were two children, two girls actually affected by this policy, this hair policy. Now they do have the option to return to classes, but so far they have not done that. Their attorneys say they plan to meet with school officials and their attorneys on Monday and hopefully work something out. Now we're talking about that viral video that shows an 11-year-old girl in tears leaving her school because of her hairstyle. Well, today that same girl stood in front of cameras with dry eyes. Holding on to her family for support, 11-year-old Faith Finity stood in front of cameras wearing the same hairstyle that got her kicked out of school. The video of Faith leaving Christ the King School in tears has been viewed more than 2.5 million times. School officials say Faith violated school policy by wearing extensions in her hair. Today, her
All right, 30 seconds with your neighbor. What words would you use to define this phenomenon? All right, here we go again.
A white Greensboro, North Carolina woman is charged with assaulting two black kids in an apartment complex swimming pool. 62-year-old Kimberly Jennings, property manager of Sagefield Garden Apartments, is charged with 2 counts of simple assault on a child under 12. The incident was caught on the apartment complex's security camera. Jennings is seen here hitting and pouring drinks on the kids. What in the world?
Okay, they were invited over by friends who lived in the complex, and she didn't think that they needed to be there. How would you just describe or define what's happening in this video? 20 seconds with your neighbor. All right, we'll take a look at a few more.
A story out of Texas, a Houston area high school suspending a black student for the second time this year because of his hairstyle. Now, as Antonia Hilton reports, the family is calling on the district to change its policy.
Darrell George, a high school junior, has been out of class for more than 2 weeks. The Barbers Hill Independent School District in Texas has suspended him twice since the start of the school year over his hairstyle.
His grades are failing, like they're going down drastically. He's not getting a proper education.
All Darrell wants is the chance to join the rest of his classmates.
Okay, have another brief conversation with your neighbors. What words would you use to define and describe what is happening in this video? And the culmination of examples that I've shared with you. All right. Here's one more.
You know, a black girl was arrested for, drawing a picture of her bully. In January, a parent of the alleged bully was very upset about the picture and demanded police involvement. The black girl ended up getting handcuffed in front of her classmates, taken into custody, and interrogated without her mother present. Nothing happened to the child who was bullying her. The American Civil Liberties Union of Hawaii wants the police and school officials to change how they handle such situations and compensate the black student's family in the amount of $500,000.
10 years old. All right, who's seeing a pattern and who's getting the gist of why I've titled my upcoming book the way that I've titled it? Okay. So, I'm gonna go on. This is the black fifth grader who was stopped at Safeway here in San Francisco. So the United States told us in 1790 that this is a white country, not just with the arbiters and developers of the Constitution, but in the legislation, right? The 1790 Naturalization Act, which was the first law pertaining to citizenship, which read, be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America of Congress assembled, that any alien being a free white person who shall have resided within the limits and under the jurisdiction of the United States for the term of 2 years may be admitted to become a citizen thereof on application to any common law court of record, and so on. So turn to your neighbor and say, we understand that this is a white country. And so we have to then understand the context that evolves because of whiteness and how dangerous and violent whiteness is and has been, and the underlying foundational functions of race as whiteness, but as also anti-blackness. And so when we go into scholarship, white scholarship, right, we have Dr. Josiah Nott, who said that black people were a creational rank between Greeks and chimpanzees. In his studies around polygenism, he says that the way that our skulls were formed made us inferior by his accounts, okay? And so we then go to Dr. Samuel Cartwright, who told us that black people suffered from diaesthesia aethiopica, that we were lazy, that we were mischievous, dishonest people. Turn to your neighbor and say, this is high quality white academia. We then go to, Dr. Cartwright also surmised that we had lower lung capacity than white people. So that was a justification for us to be enslaved. So slavery was not the predicate for blackness, but blackness was the predicate for slavery. Does that make sense? Okay. He says, it is the red vital blood sent to the brain that liberates their minds when under the white man's control. And it is the want of sufficiency of red vital blood that changed their minds to ignorance and barbarism when in freedom. I want you to breathe that in, as though we have different blood running through our veins than white humans and all other humans. Turn to your neighbor and say sociopaths. We go to Dr. Orson Fowler and Samuel Wells, who were the leading leaders in the hygienical sciences, the physiological arena, and Dr. Wells' study of physiognomy, where he said that you can actually tell a person or group's developmentally functional or intellectual and moral development based on their outer appearance, based on how they look. And he wrote in his book, New Physiognomy, and I quote, bearing in mind then its limitations and modifications, it is well in all cases when making a physiognomical examination to observe the facial angle. Figure 142 will help to convey an idea of the different grades of development and intelligence as indicated in the profile, size, as well as form being taken into account. Turn to your neighbor. I'm going to give you 20 seconds and just ask your neighbor, what do you see? And answer it for them. Some of you are silent. So let me tell you what I see, both in the video examples that I showed you, as well as these brief examples that I'm sharing with you, historic, but also mapping it into the present. I see terrorism. I see psychopathy. I see people who come from a culture and group who are so profoundly deficient and inferior and insecure that they need to take other humans to make them the object of their superiority. Meanwhile, white mediocrity and white deficiency can reign all day. John Corcoran, he says, I was a teacher for 17 years, but couldn't read or write. This is the value of having white skin. He said that teacher conferences, my teacher told my parents, he's a smart boy, he'll get it, and they moved me on to the 3rd grade. He's a smart boy, he'll get it, and they moved me on to the 4th grade. He's a smart boy, he'll get it, and they moved me on to the 5th grade, but I wasn't getting it. And so just having white skin affords, one, the ability to maintain what I have written in my work as cultural competences and beliefs. Does that make sense? So, here's a quick reflection question. I'll give you 2 minutes. In what ways do legal, religious, institutional, and cultural conditions, as well as academic and scientific theory and scholarship, contribute to the dehumanization of Black people and the further legitimization of whiteness as the standard for humanity and superiority? 2 minutes. You're going to share with your neighbor. So if you're not sitting by anyone, you can stand up and find your neighbor. Even insert yourself into a triangle. All right, if you hear my voice, go ahead and clap once, go ahead and clap twice. If you hear my voice, clap twice. All right. So I'd love to hear from some of you when we open up for the Q&A about your thoughts, and maybe questions. So let me continue on. Whiteness told us that only white women could be raped. So when laws began to develop around who could be raped and who sexual assault could be committed against and who it couldn't, whiteness told us that only white women could be raped, but also that the identity, the predominant identity for rapists were Black men. And so in every single law that then emerges under the new empire of the United States of America, Black men are reign supreme as the prototype for rapists. And we've got their scientific and academic theory to back it up, right? Even when cases move to court, such as the 1855 case concerning Celia, who belonged to a pedophile and a human sex trafficker by the name of Robert Newsom, who actually bought her so he could replace his sexual partner because his wife had died. And he raped her upon purchasing her when she was age 14. And after repeated threats to him that if he did not stop raping her, she would kill him, she murdered him. And when the case moved to court, here was the instruction that the Judge William Augustus Hall, gave to the jury. If Newsom was in the habit of having intercourse with the defendant, who was his slave, and went to her cabin on the night he was killed to have intercourse with her or for any other purpose, and while he was standing in the floor talking to her, she struck him with a stick, which was a dangerous weapon, and knocked him down, and struck him again after he fell, and killed him by either blow. It is murder in the first degree. So let me reframe this for you. If Newsom was in the habit of raping the defendant, who was his slave, and went to her cabin on the night he was killed to rape her or for any other reason, and she defended herself, it's murder in the first degree. And so cultural rape culture, say this with me, rape culture in America is a legal, economic, and moral institution. When we go to Mississippi, 1859, the Mississippi Supreme Court concluded that a male slave could only commit a rape upon a white woman. They reasoned, the crime of rape does not exist in this state between African slaves. Our laws recognize no marital status as between slaves. Their sexual intercourse is left to be regulated by their owners. The regulations of law as to the white race on the subject of sexual intercourse do not and cannot, for obvious reasons, apply to slaves. Their intercourse is promiscuous, and the violation of a female slave by a male slave would be a mere assault and battery. How is this landing for you? Because it lands for me again as terrorism, as a nature that evolved and developed through psychological perversion. How many of you are following me? By show of hands. And yet, there's no discussion about the delusion and the perversion of whiteness. So the rape of black women and girls by white or black men was legal. Indictments were sometimes dismissed for failing to allege that the victim was white. In those states where it was legal for white men to rape white women, statutes provided less severe penalties for the convicted white rapist than for the convicted black one. In addition, common law rules both defined rape narrowly and made it a difficult crime to prove. During slavery then, the legal system treated seriously only one racial combination of rape involving a black offender and a white victim. This selective recognition continued long after slavery ended. We go to the Georgia Supreme Court in 1899. Turn to your neighbor and say, slavery's over. And they say that if you are black, you are a rapist, and if there's any evidence that were to arise to combat or to refute that the intention was actually to rape the victim, your blackness would trump that evidence. In Florida, 1918, the Florida Supreme Court ruled that black women couldn't be raped. Why? Because they are immoral. What has been said by some of our courts about an unchaste female being a comparatively rare exception is no doubt true where the population is composed largely of the Caucasian race. But we would blind ourselves to actual conditions if we adopted this rule where another race that is largely immoral constitutes an appreciable part of the population. So we go to the Supreme Court in 1927. They said that compulsory sterilization of the unfit and undesirable does not or did not violate the due process clause of the 14th Amendment. Chief Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, he says, it is better for the world if instead of waiting to execute degenerate offspring for crime or to let them starve for their imbecility, society can prevent those who are manifestly unfit from continuing their kind. 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. Turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor. Neighbor. This is whiteness. This is also whiteness. We go to Brock Turner in 2016. So again, if you are white, you can be a rapist and still have the legal system affirm that you are a good person, you come from a good family. Prison is not the right decision or not the right avenue for your rehabilitation. So Judge Aaron Persky, he said, and in my decision to grant probation, The question that I have to ask myself again, consistent with those rules of court, is state prison for this defendant an antidote to that poison? Is incarceration in state prison the right answer for the poisoning of Jane's life? And in trying to balance the factors in the rules of court, I conclude that it is not. And that justice would best be served, ultimately, with a grant of probation. We then go to Jacob Walter Anderson, indicted on 4 counts of sexual assault, reached a plea deal through the district attorney, received 3 years of deferred probation, ordered to pay a $400 fine. Christopher Belcher. This week, Mr. Belcher, 20, was sentenced in the assault on and sexual attacks on 3 other teenage girls. Facing up to 8 years in prison, he was instead given 8 years probation by a judge who said he agonized over the decision. I'm not ashamed to say that I actually prayed over what is the appropriate decision, appropriate sentence in this case, because there was great pain. So have a brief 1-minute discussion. What connections are you making? And I'm not seeking agreement from white people at all. I don't prioritize whiteness or white people in my work in that way. I am speaking in particular to black people. But if you are an ally and you're willing to see this through another prism, other than the socialization of whiteness and white supremacy, you're invited to the party too. So turn to your neighbor and share, what connections are you making? Rush through some additional slides. So this is a quote from Winthrop Jordan's book, White Over Black, which was published around 50 plus years ago. And he gives accounts in the first chapter. He talks about the first impressions that the English in particular had when they first came into contact with West Africans. He says, indeed, the most important aspect of English reaction to Negro heathenism was that Englishmen evidently did not regard it as separate from the Negro's other attributes. Heathenism was treated not so much as a specifically religious defect, but as one manifestation of a general refusal to measure up to proper standards, as a failure to be English or even civilized. There was every reason for Englishmen to fuse the various attributes they found in Africans. During the first century of English contact with Africa, Protestant Christianity was an important element in English patriotism, especially during the struggle against Spain, and the Elizabethans. Special Christianity was interwoven into his conception of his own nationality, and he was therefore inclined to regard the Negro's lack of true religion as part of theirs. Being a Christian was not merely a matter of subscribing to certain doctrines. It was a quality inherent in oneself and in one's society. It was interconnected with the other attributes of normal and proper men, as one of the earliest English accounts distinguished Negroes from Englishmen. They were a people of beastly living without a God, law, religion, or commonwealth, which was to say that Negroes were not Englishmen. Far from isolating African heathenism as a separate characteristic, English travelers sometimes linked it explicitly with barbarity and blackness. They already had in hand a meditating term among these impinging concepts, the devil. As one observer declared, Negroes in color, so in condition, are little other than devils incarnate, and further, the devil has infused prodigious idolatry into their hearts, enough to relish his palate and aggrandize the tortures when he gets power to fry their souls, as the raging sun has already scorched their cold black carcasses. So how many of you can see and understand that this mindset, this psychology, has transcended and it has been passed down generation by generation by generation through laws, through education, through cultural norms, through cultural customs around what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, what's right, what's wrong, who's wrong in any given situation, and the predicate has been color. All right, so white people suffer from a lack of impression management concerning themselves and others, especially black people. This truth has persisted throughout the ages. The historical record has well documented white people's narcissistic personality disorder and insecurities, along with their internalized distortions, fear, and perversions about African people. So we go to some examples. President Thomas Jefferson, he says, "I advance it therefore as a suspicion only that the blacks, whether originally a distinct race or made distinct by time and circumstances, are inferior to the whites in the endowments both of body and mind." President Abraham Lincoln, he says, "I will say then that I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races, that I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of making voters or jurors of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermarry with white people. And I will say in addition to this, that there is a physical difference between the white and black races, which I believe will forever forbid the two races living together on terms of social and political equality. And inasmuch as they cannot so live while they do remain together, there must be the position of superior and inferior, and I, as much as any other man, am in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race." Turn to your neighbor and say, "It's an obsession." Turn to your other neighbor and say, "Whiteness is an obsession." It has a political value and functionality. It has an economic value and functionality. It's very valuable to the U.S. Anti-blackness is very valuable too, because it has a usefulness in terms of its low value or valuelessness, right? So if you have a permanent underclass of people who you consider or label as black people, you can justify why they get graded lower and get low grades. You can justify that they have a behavioral deficiency using Eurocentricity as the standard for behavior, and then make special ed referrals, build a whole industry that further pathologizes these children and misdiagnose them with behavioral deficiencies using Eurocentricity as a predicate, and misprescribe and overprescribe. So turn to your neighbor and say, as much as we want to talk about how bad anti-blackness is, it is the foundation of all American, all white American institutions. We then go to President Andrew Johnson. If blacks were given the right to vote, that would place every splay-footed, bandy-shanked, humpbacked, thick-lipped, flat-nosed, woolly-headed, ebon-colored Negro in the country upon an equality with the poor white man. As long as I am president, this will be a country for white men and a government for white men. President Theodore Roosevelt, the goal should be to assimilate the backward race so it may enter into the possession of true freedom, while the forward race is enabled to preserve unharmed the high civilization wrought out by our forefathers. President Woodrow Wilson, the white men of the South were aroused by the mere instinct of self-preservation to rid themselves by fair means or foul of the intolerable burdens of governments sustained by the votes of ignorant Negroes and conducted in the interest of adventurers. President Calvin Coolidge, biological laws tell us that certain divergent people will not mix or blend. The Nordics propagate themselves successfully. With other races, the outcomes show deterioration on both sides. And again, he says, America, let me go back. America must be kept American, right? The superintendent that suspended Gerald George, he says, being an American requires conformity with the positive benefit of unity. And if you don't conform with whiteness, you will lose your job, you will be suspended from school, you will have your reputation destroyed, and so on. How many of you can relate to what I am saying, especially the black people in this room? That's right, you must fall in line. And if you don't fall in line with American whiteness, these institutions will be used against you as a weapon to terrorize and destroy you. Strom Thurmond, one of the longest serving members of Congress, he says, I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this was during his presidential run in 1948, that there's not enough troops in the Army to force the Southern people to break down segregation and admit the nigger race into our theaters, into our swimming pools, into our homes, and into our churches. We then go to Nixon. You have to face the facts. The whole problem is really the blacks. The key is to devise a system that recognizes this without appearing to. We then get to Ron DeSantis. He says, in Florida, we're taking a stand against the state-sanctioned racism that is critical race theory. We won't allow Florida tax dollars to be spent teaching kids to hate our country or hate each other, only to hate black people. We will invest dollars in that. And then we get to former President Trump. He says, America is the land of opportunity. Oh, don't give Trump any extra special attention. He's following the same psychological, cultural patterns and processes that have built the foundation and the operations and functionality of this culture. You all see that, right? So turn to your neighbor and say, Trump, finally in context. He's a reflection of everything that white America values. The celebrity, the maleness, the cisgenderedness, the heteronormativity, the patriarchy, the economic positionality. This is America's best. Turn to your neighbor and say, he's America's best. America is the land of opportunity. However, the influx, it needs to be kept to a certain level. They're destroying the blood of our country. They come from Africa, they come from Asia, they come from... Are you all getting the picture? Have I given you enough examples? I have more. Okay. We're not a racist country. So we have it written in the law, you can rape black women. But we've never been a racist country. This goes beyond gaslighting, and it's rooted in psychological delusion. Okay? So anti-blackness is a white American legal, social, cultural, economic, institutional values and belief system. I'll say this. If you haven't gotten this definition already, get my book, The 400-Year Holocaust. It's in there too. It'll be in the new one as well. I'm going to close because anti-blackness, although whiteness and anti-blackness, white psychopathology and anti-blackness were created and developed by white people. They've been disseminated throughout the culture. And so we see our Latinx folks who have been psychologized with an anti-black as well as pro-white psychology. Our Asian siblings as well. And Dr. Claire Jean Kim, in her book, Asian Americans in an Anti-Black World, she says, white supremacy we can think of as a force that lifts up white people and pushes down all not white people. Anti-blackness, on the other hand, pushes down all black people, pushes down black people, and lifts up all not black people. So you can immediately see that Asians, as are other groups, are in an odd configuration. She talks about racial valorization that's given to Asian people, certain Asian groups, that white people have prioritized in this country. And so this is supported by people like Madison Grant, who created a racial ladder back in the early 20th century in his book, The Passing of the Great Race, where you see here he qualified non-Negroes as being more intellectually, morally superior than Negroes, right? And then we were told that Asians were smarter than whites and whites were smarter than blacks by two behavioral health experts, right? And with the introduction of the bell curve. And so, let me close. American culture socializes and trains people to develop, possess, and operationalize innate compulsive psychological and emotional reflexes and impulses that react negatively to black people, especially black people who do not conform to and or emulate white sociocultural standards. And so even black people have adopted an anti-black mindset. We see that in this example with social media influencer Tarek Ali. One thing I hate about dark black women is they always loud and smell rank. If I did date females, black bees would be the last thing. We go to Dr. Jackie from the hit show Married to Medicine. She said that black women were too dramatic. And when they go to the doctor, the reason that they're not believed many times during their pregnancies is that they're reaching out to the doctor 25 times, and when something is finally wrong, the doctors think that they're crying wolf. Meanwhile, black women are how many more times likely to die? 3 to 4 times more. So you even have this psychology that we have ingested just as much as white people. So, Dr. Bobby Wright, I know I've gone over time. Did I go over time?
No.
I haven't, okay. Because I want to close with the video. So Dr. Bobby Wright, one of my favorite philosophers that I use to ground my work, in his work around the psychopathic racial personality, he says, in their relationship with the black race, whites are psychopaths, and their behavior represents an underlying biologically transmitted proclivity with roots deep in their evolutionary history. How many of you could see the proclivity that evolved deep within the evolutionary history of whiteness? By show of hands. How many of you could see it? Some people are sitting here, oh no, I don't want to raise my hand. That's called denial. The psychopath is an individual who is constantly in conflict with other persons or groups. He is unable to experience guilt, is completely selfish and callous, and has a total disregard for the rights of others. One of the best methods that can be used to measure the psychopathic traits of the white race is observing and analyzing their universal overt behaviors and attitudes towards blacks. Psychopaths simply ignore the concept of right and wrong. By ignoring this trait in the white race, the lack of ethical and moral development, blacks have made and are still making a tragic mistake in basing the worldwide liberation movement, black liberation movement, on moral suasion. It is pathological for blacks to keep attempting to use moral suasion on a people who have no morality, where race is the variable. And so I'm going to give a clarion call to you. If you have morality around black people, then start acting like it. Turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, start acting like it. In your leadership, in where you funnel your resources, and who you prioritize on your team, start acting like it. But here's the other thing. Let's hold up 2 fingers and I'm done. 2 fingers when I close with the video. If white people have created this cultural context, the institutional context through its institutions, it's called the cultural context, and have had control and dominion over all of the other groups and people who exist here in white America, what's your relationship to anti-blackness? What's your relationship to whiteness as an Asian person, as a black person, as a Latinx person? This is seeped into our DNA as well. So I'm going to close with a video featuring Dr. Alvin Toussaint, who was at Harvard for a number of years as the Vice President of Student Affairs, also a psychiatrist.
Dr. Toussaint? Let me just first say that I think first we have to establish that racism, white racism, is a mental illness. Now, I say that because many white social scientists would like to define racism as something normal in the culture, as a cultural variant. And I think as long as we approach it that way, we really don't deal with the pathology of racism itself. It's like saying that cancer, because a lot of people have in this society, that cancer is somehow normal. But we know that cancer kills, and racism kills and destroys also. And it would be like defining Hitler's slaughter of the Jews as somehow normal. And I think we have to face the fact that racism is a mental aberration. And I think underlying white racism is a white paranoia, a fear or a delusion that black people, colored people in the world are somehow going to destroy and hurt the white man. And it's very convenient, I think, for whites to project their impulses, their unacceptable feelings onto blacks, and pretend that they're the wholly good ones and make blacks the victim. So I think that racism is something that doesn't only affect the victim, that is the black man, but also affects the victimizer, the white man, and it's bad for his mental health too, because he doesn't face himself honestly. He pretends that the problem lies outside of himself, so that this society never deals with its violence, its own perversion, its own corruption. They pretend that somehow if you get rid of all the niggers, that everything will be solved, will be much better off. And of course that's not so, but that's a delusion. And it even, I think, carries over into our foreign policy, our attitudes toward Asians, our attitudes in Vietnam, the massacres in Florida, the feeling that we are discouraged, that is we, the white man, not us, can destroy and wipe out other people because we're the chosen people, so to speak. I think that whites then really don't mature.
So, a few more quotes. So, Judge Michael Becker, I had the opportunity in having him in a 12-week leaders fellowship that I run. I'm on the 9th cohort right now. I think he was in the 5th or 6th. He says, while white racism is a disease, this was his epiphany during the fellowship. I asked him if I could use it. He says, yeah. He says, it is a pathology. Other illnesses, however, are disabling. You want to be cured of cancer so that you do not die. White racism is enabling. The patient is not motivated to be cured. The anti-blackness of Asian Americans is not organic. It reflects a classic tactic of white colonialism set up by non-white groups in an artificial hierarchy with black people at the bottom, create conflict when useful, sit back and watch. How many of you can relate to this? Okay. Dr. Aruna Kilanani, she goes, I think so. I think whites are psychopathic. I think there are many lies, the level of lying that white people do that has started since colonialism, we're just used to it, such as every time you steal a country, you loot, you say you've discovered something. We don't say that we've killed all these people, we got rid of the Native Americans. We say we discovered America. You don't talk about the level of death. So, she says you don't talk about the level of what actually occurred. You wipe the slate clean, you sanitize the violence, and you actually got lost along the way. You tried to go to India, then you say you discovered something. And this level of discovery is everywhere. You discovered vegetarianism, you discovered yoga. Everything is a discovery, and it's all actually stolen. Turn to your neighbor and say it's all stolen. So I'm going to end actually with a quote. I think I passed that one and try to find it. But Dr. Sarah Hart, she made my heart glad, actually. She left a comment on my social media, and I found it and I asked her if I could use it. But she said in this quote, let me go back. Here we go. So white supremacy is diagnosable in individuals, systems, and society as a whole. It's a delusion. Any idea of someone who is fundamentally superior based on race, appearance, wealth, etc. is delusional thinking. In training, we are routinely advised to let people have their racism, homophobia, white supremacy as a personal belief that is not a problem unless the client says it's a problem. Okay, and should I also responsibly let my clients believe that day is night and ants are bigger than skyscrapers? No, we diagnose and treat delusions. Thank you.
Come to you on campus. So you want to be well prepared to buy and read the second book. All right. And with that, I'm going to introduce the newest member of the Finance and Administrative Services Executive Team. He's well known to some of you on campus, and we hope to extend that to all of you soon. It is Clint Germario. Did I get that wrong today, Clint?
Jaramillo.
I'm going to work on it. It's my honor to give a brief introduction. He joined as the inaugural executive director of our broad diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and anti-racism efforts. He joined UCSF in 2016 as the director of the LGBTQ Resource Center after serving as the associate director of UC Santa Barbara's Resource Center for Sexual and Gender Diversity. Before joining FAS, he served as executive director at ODO, leading the LGBT Resource Center, Multicultural Resource Center, Undocumented Student Support Services, and Diversity and Inclusion Certificate Program. Please give a warm welcome to Clint. With that, we'll turn it over to Q&A.
Thank you, Erin. And first of all, thank you. This is my pool. What's happening there?
Welcome to Zoom.
Oh, yeah. We are switching. switching to the Q&A on Zoom.
Followed by the pound sign again.
Theme music.
Before we get started, any reactions from the room?
36, 31,
Come on.
not 6.
Please.
Please
Up
enter the
there.
green passcode, followed by
And
the
please,
pound sign.
if you can just tell us your name and then your comment or question.
You are in the meeting now. Recording in progress.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gloria Walls. I'm in the security division of our UCSF Police Department, and I'm so grateful to be here this afternoon. I'm a native San Franciscan. Parents are from the South. And this has been articulated in a way that helps define what I've been thinking but couldn't put to words adequately. So I want to thank you for that. It's a little emotional even. And the part that's emotional, I wasn't even aware that I was emotional until speaking upon it. So my question is, I'd like to know from you, Dante, how do you think religion, in the way that it's been constructed in the United States, Christianity particularly, do you see racism in how Christianity has been taught to African Americans?
Absolutely. And that's
Thank you.
So first of all, because my spirit is guiding me to do something, so I just want to follow it. So if you go back to the 17th century, in English colonial America, a large portion of my work revolves around and encompasses the transition from Christian as a legal term that situated English people and other European ethnic people who subscribed to that religion into that categorization, into that institution. And so Christianity in America evolved as what I refer to as a cultural, organizing, and regulatory institution, similarly to race. It functioned in the same way because it provided freedom under English common law. Christianity provided freedom to people based on their identity. And so before the English transitioned to using the term white, which evolved in or around, I would say between the 1670s, in the 1730s is where you begin to see the usage of whiteness as a replacement for Christian and freeborn, because prior to that they were using English, freeborn, and Christian as legal terms that were instituted in the colonial laws, okay? It's not until in or around, and there's one law that I refer to in 1667 that establishes that Indians and blacks, people who are of an enslaved status, are going to be admitted into Christianity. And that's in 1667. But what they say as a condition, or state as a condition in that one law, is that while these enslaved people will be permitted to become Christian through their baptism, because baptism affords freedom, then it will no longer afford freedom. And so it's what I refer to as a conversion law, a conversion process. And so as blacks and indigenous people, Indians as they called them, begin to be converted into Christianity, they had to transition from using that term Christian because it now encompassed not just European ethnic groups and as well as English people, but it now also encompassed these people of color that they considered olive colored and black, that it was never meant for. And so Christianity, everyone say this with you, Christianity and whiteness are synonymous.
I want to thank you for opening this conversation, and something that is important in your work, and you highlighted it today, was that your work is for Black folk. And I can feel the room. I see folks who are touched, tears in the room. Is there anything in particular that you want to tell folks right now? Because I'm feeling the room, and it feels heavy for Black folks, particularly coming from you at this particular stage. In your work, any hopes that you want to just get across for folks in the room?
Well, I want to thank my sister who opened, because she said it all in terms of how this experience and how my words resonated with her. She said, this is what I've been feeling, but I haven't been able to articulate it. And I want to just ask, how many other Black people in the room share that experience, that I presented something? I'm going to ask you to stand. I presented something here today that is your life experience. You've been experiencing it, feeling it, but you've not been able to articulate it to this degree. And I want everyone in here to look around the room. And I want to say this for the record. Please keep standing. So if there are any surveys given about this event, these are the only ones that matter to me. Does that make sense? So, thank you for standing. And so, I'm really passionate about this because everything in this country is pro-white. It's pro-white, it's what we learn. It's like even when I'm giving trainings or teaching courses sometimes, I remember I was doing a training, 3-year project for the San Francisco Police Department, and I had a sergeant just have a breakdown, and she's like, why are you just focused on Black people? It's just black, 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 black. And I said, this is part of the sickness. Because I'm sure you went through the same primary education system I did, where you learned about all white people, predominantly white people, how great they were, their humanity was humanized, they were our cultural heroes. You went from preschool to kindergarten, 1st through 12th grade, and you probably never once uttered, why are we learning about white people? It's just white, 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 white. Turn to your neighbor and say, that's how insidious the sickness is.
That's how insidious the sickness is.
I have a very, very provocative question. What would you say for folks who may say that your work is considered to be reverse racism? Because you're not talking specifically about whiteness or the ways in which white people are being affected by this.
I don't make room for that.
What do you think about reverse racism, for example? Some folks believe that's true, right?
Some folks believe that ants are biggest skyscrapers, right? So, I mean, it just really goes along with the nature.
It's a part of the pathology?
Yes.
Expand on that.
So where's the evidence to back that up? Because what I'm presenting to you is not just an opinion or something that I came up with overnight. I didn't think, oh my goodness, there's something wrong with the society, or, you know, whites are psychopathological or any of this. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I would say 15 years ago. I didn't think anything of this. And when I began to look at these laws and really understand that white people were explicit about writing their motivations into the law, that it's okay to rape black women, it's okay to rape young black girls, it's okay to set up black men in wooden cabins to rape young black girls and black women and create an economic institution out of it. Tell me how that is not psychopathic and sociopathic. That's what I want someone to explain to me. And all of the logic around, well, you know, this is just human nature. There have been groups in the history that have done this to other groups. So whenever you see, let's say, a group of Latinx or Asian, white or black teenagers, young people that are going out and committing home invasions and hitting women over the head with objects and stealing their persons, I want you to just say that's just human nature. Are you understanding what I am attempting to project to you? That is a way that white psychopathology serves to diminish and can perpetually dehumanize non-white people, and particularly black people. And so we can use, and we all function and operate using white logic. That is the underpinnings of our educational system, how we learn, what we learn, the construction of knowledge in this place. None of it is ours as African people, and we still have to abide by it and do well within it while being terrorized because we violated the hair policy, because we wore a hairstyle that is not acceptable, right? We still have to be good citizens. And so I would just want to ask, human to human, how many of you, if you came from a group or part of a group that suffered through the examples that I shared with you in those videos, or that was you or your family, how many of you would be angry, upset, enraged by show of hands? Okay. And so we need to then understand that black rage, the black rage that James Baldwin spoke about, that Malcolm X spoke about, is the result and a response and reaction to white terrorism and white psychopathy and sociopathy. Try that on. Turn to your neighbors and try that on for size. All right.
Melissa, from the chat.
Yeah, so I just wanted to engage some of our virtual participants. So we're going to have Sarah go ahead and unmute, and you can go ahead and ask your question, Sarah.
Thank you. My question is really about, so I'm a community mental health student, and I've been looking at addressing and healing from the spiritual disease of whiteness and white supremacy, and really looking at creating a culture that's not based on supremacy, based on the work of Resma Menachem and Janet Holmes and others. And so I was wondering if you could say more about any of the specific mental health diagnoses you've come across as they relate to whiteness and the disease of white supremacy.
Yes, but I won't say anything right now, but in my upcoming production, there are different terms and definitions that I share to explain and make clear the different ways in which, or as Dr. Poussin spoke to, the different manifestations of white psychopathology, including the bit I shared around depression management, the corruption that exists within it. We refer to things as double standards. It's not just double standards. What's the underpinning? What's the underlying influence and dynamic that exists there that would create such a double standard that when someone of this color goes out and commits rape, they don't deserve to be sent to prison or rehabilitated, but when someone of this color does, they do. Look at a new neighbor in the room, just make eye contact with someone else, and look at them and lock eyes and say, that's crazy. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
So just to build on that, one of the questions that some folks asked has been just the process of your second book. Any key learnings or challenges that you found as you were exploring your second body of work?
No, there is an abundance of evidence that just evolves every day. I mean, with this, with the rise to political influence and celebrity that we've seen with Donald Trump, that just put the cherry on the top of the cake for me. So this is everything. It just it proves and it furthers the argument, right? My work is not conclusive. Everyone's not going to agree with it. I get it, right? But even before Donald Trump was convicted of rape civilly, even before like all of these things happened, you still have a person that by whiteness, by the standards of whiteness, is incoherent, inarticulate, right? Unable to have a informed discussion and conversation on any topic. Everything is big or it's a lot. How many of you are following me, right? None of us as black people, we couldn't even keep jobs as janitors if we showed up that way. And yet this man represents the white collective body politic. This man represents the standard that we should be reaching and striving for as Americans. I don't know if there's any more of a delusional example than Donald Trump. And I'm not talking about his politics, I'm not talking about anything about where he stands politically, because while he can be referenced as a primary example, he's just one in a sea of many, many, many.
I mean, you said it was beyond gaslighting, right? And the question that I often hear for some of my students, my colleagues is, what is the future of America? And I think one of the collective questions of like, what do we do to heal this nation?
Who is we? Who is we? Because the last time I checked, we are not in charge of the economic system. We are not in charge of the political system. We are not in charge of the legal system. We are not in charge of the educational system. This is all happening. It has all happened because of what the things that white people have prioritized as important to them, their well-being, their stability. Anti-blackness and anti-non-whiteness functions as a psychological benefit for white people. To believe that you're superior than other people, that does something every day for little children, for middle school children, high school, adults. It functions beautifully. And then also, to Dr. Amos Wilson's point, who was a psychologist in the 1980s and 1990s, he says it functions to impair the psychological functioning of black people. So if you can keep black people crying because their daughter was suspended from school, their son was suspended from school, they arrested their 10-year-old daughter, you don't have to worry about those children competing, because their psyche and emotional states have been disrupted, right? Go sit in class and be a good student? It's impossible once your spirit and confidence is broken. And we see white people beautifully. We have seen white people beautifully create industries out of black pain and suffering. It starts with slavery, but it goes to the school to prison pipeline. It goes to misdiagnoses, special ed referrals, suspension. These are industries. People are employed, they're taking home salaries, and they're building their retirements off of black genocide. And anyone who wants to come with, well, where's the hope? Where are you living? What are you not paying attention to? What is your lived experience? As I sit home and take care of a black woman who became very independent at a young age, who entered a marriage where things did not work out, and she still took it upon herself to remain independent, to raise 2 young boys, to battle sexism and racism in an unfriendly and unkind world, who is right now at home diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, and when we go to the hospital, they mistreat her by running tests for cocaine and methamphetamine and not reading her medical record. Where are you living? What are you paying attention to? When I go to pick up my 78-year-old black father from Kaiser Hospital in Oakland, and I ask the nurse, just please keep him there because he was given the wrong medication and then became unconscious. They had to revive him. So he's incoherent. And I pull up to Kaiser Hospital just 3 to 5 minutes after I've talked to this nurse, and they leave my father outside in a chair with his shirt unbuttoned and his pants unbuttoned, barely conscious. And then I tell people, you should be more positive. Or people tell me, you should be more positive. Where's your hope? Where's your optimism? It's psychotic.
There's some work that we need to, not some work, a lot of work that needs to be done when it comes to caring for our black communities.
Who needs to do it? White people. The people who are in control of the institutions, the people who are in control of our opportunities in this country, the people who are in control of whether or not I walk out of this place dead or alive today. And where does the work need to be done? I'm going to ask you to answer it. Where does the work need to be done? It's not policy, which is, that's right. Turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor. Right? But it's also rubbed off on us as people of color, so we need to do the work too. And that's what I'm concerned about as well.
Yes, so we have one question here, and it says, to say that Christianity and whiteness are synonymous can be viewed as a form of religious discrimination, and what we think it. That the racist whites in American history used Christianity as a tool for their negative intent should not demonize Christianity. It's similar to the demonizing Islam because some folks use it to terrorize others. Can you strike a balance between these 2 fields of thought?
So let's be very clear about her question, which was around the implementation of Christianity in America. And that's what I spoke to.
We understand there is a problem. We all agree. I'm pretty sure at the time we said there is a problem. We definitely agree with that. But in your suggestion, where should we start? If we have to take one message from you, that I'm going to believe everything you said by heart, by my action, where should I start?
Start by deprogramming and reprogramming yourself through the education concerning the history of this country and its influence on the present in terms of how we function as a society in present day. But it's got to start in a retrained and reformed psyche.
It's just extending my question. So, as you said, I agree that the place by now, it's probably my second nature. If I'm one of those who believe that, my race is superior, by this time I've been raised a certain way, so it's my second nature. So the ground root or the cause is where I've been coming from. So it should start at elementary school or somewhere where we have to change, just structurally change the way we are raising our kids.
That's right. However, to your point rather, we see right now in this country more than 40 states that have either written resolutions or policies and laws to block certain types of information from being taught, particularly spotlighting African American history, African American courses and stuff. So if we can't even face or confront the truth or have the freedom to be able to tell the truth from our experience, from our vantage point, then how can we even enter into conversations or discussions around any types of freedom? There's no such thing as freedom in this country. We are ruled by white people. We're ruled by white institutions. And I think the people who have more of a hard time facing that are people who believe that class is the issue. It's really not race. And if you believe that, I'm going to implore you to pull up an article. It's called, the New York Times published this. It was a study that was done. The Punishing Reach of Racism in America, where they studied thousands upon thousands of young black boys and young white boys who grew up in affluent homes. They grew up in affluent families. They were not middle class, they were not poor. Most of the young black boys ended up poor, lower middle class or middle class. Okay? They did not maintain the wealth. White boys that grew up affluent, most of them remained wealthy, upper middle class or middle class. And even white boys that grew up poor, most of them ended up rich, upper middle class or middle class. So turn to your neighbor and say, it's not about class.
It's not about class.
It's about anti-blackness and white supremacy.
And white supremacy.
So Dante, I truly admire you. Thank you so much for being here. I took Dante's fellowship and it was transformational, life-changing. It turned everything I knew about the history of the U.S. on its head. So I completely am so grateful to have had that opportunity. So thanks, Chief. I don't think he's listening, but thank you to UCSF for allowing me to attend that fellowship. So if you haven't taken it, please take it. But Dante, I'd love to know, where can we find you and follow you?
So, for those of you that want to stay in touch, and I hope you do. Some people are like, I never. Oh, no, I really do hope that you do, because, so you can go to my website at DanteKing.com, and you can also either reach out to my assistant, one of my assistants is here with me today, Marcel Walker, at marcel@DanteKing.com. That's marcel@DanteKing.com. Or my executive assistant, who is Jayandra Henderson, and she is at jj@DanteKing.com. And I also want to say that I would not be able to be out here or anywhere doing what I do if it were not for this individual here, Marcel, so I want to give him a hand. And Jay.